Hey guys, it's Greg with JHDrums bringing you another drum mixing tutorial. In today's video, I want to get into processing our tracks. Finally, yay! But before we do that, we can go ahead and take a listen to what we've got so far. Again, all we've done so far as processing is actually making sure that our gain phase relationship between our close mics and our overheads is correct, and that was done by adding a utility plugin to reverse phase, and the only other thing was the sidechain compression that we added to our overheads. So let's take a listen to how things are sitting pretty much as a basic setup after we've gone through just standard mix procedures. So let's take a listen. Again, nothing too fancy. Just basically getting our levels even, making sure everything's sitting where it needs to be, monitoring our gain, etc. So where I like to start when it comes to actually getting into plugins, EQ, compression, etc., is the overheads. And the reason is that our overhead is our it is our picture. It's what's captured the entire kit in the room, and it's what we want to base the rest of our subjects off of. So let's take a listen to the overheads. We'll go ahead and solo them. Typically, I don't recommend soloing tracks individually to EQ or to process really in any circumstance. You want to listen to it as a whole. But in this case, just because it is a tutorial and because we're trying to focus on just the overheads, we're going to go ahead and take a peek by soloing the overheads. So let's go ahead and add our first EQ plugin. And we do this in Logic by going to EQ, obviously, channel EQ, and we'll go to a stereo cue because this is a summed stereo track. Now, probably the first thing I do when I'm adding EQ to anything, the only exception is probably kick drum, is what's called high pass filtering. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with this. What this does is it eliminates any of that sub-bass frequency that's not necessary for a track. And overheads is a good example of this. What we'll do is we'll play it, we'll monitor it, we'll move our low pass filter up in the frequency range, and we'll see, we'll find a spot where it's actually audible that, there's a difference in what we're monitoring. And then we'll just bring it back slightly so that we're not getting rid of anything that's, necessary for the overhead track. So let's go ahead and take a listen to that, and we will mess around with our low pass filter here. Now you could tell, if I bring it up to 600 hertz, that completely kills our sound. That's extreme. But if I bring it down to the 80 hertz range, now this is engaged, and if I am to turn this off, there's virtually no difference, and that's the point. This information in this section, anywhere from 20 hertz to probably upwards of 100 to 150 hertz, is not going to be necessary for our overhead tracks. So let's find that sweet spot. Let's get into a better take here. Again, with the low pass, you want to make sure that with the arc, that you're not gonna, be too steep. You want it to be more of a subtle arc, and I like around an 18 dB octave setting in Logic. But even around 100 hertz. no big difference there, so I do notice that getting into the 130 range is going to be a little much. Let's just go with around 115 or so. Now this is going to depend on your mix and the type of sound you're going after with your overheads, but what this does is this makes room for the kick drum and, you know, the rumble of our toms, just the instruments that actually require this sub bass frequency, and our overheads don't. So that is the first thing to look at when processing our overheads with an EQ. Next thing is going to probably be what we'll do is we'll actually do what's called an EQ sweep. And it's going to be around the 4 to 500 hertz region, which is going to be our low mids or the mud frequency to drummers. If you're a drummer and you've done any type of drum mixing, you'll know what I'm talking about. And we want to find a place where we're getting a lot of resonance from transients in that area, and then we want to cut very gently. I am a big fan of subtractive EQ. I don't like boosting more than 3 or 4 dB. Now I can, and I'm not afraid to if it's necessary, and I can't go back and record. But ideally, you've recorded it, you know, properly, and you're not going to have to do you know, extreme boost to make up for a poorly recorded source. So let's monitor the overheads again and check out the low mid frequency range and see if we can't tighten things up, clear up some mud. And when you're sweeping EQ, you can hear that ringing. Really pay attention to that, because that's going to be where our mud or our problem frequency is going to center around, and then we'll increase our Q and subtract, again, subtractive EQ to improve that sound. Ooh, 400 hertz. Let's try around 4. Now let's go, we don't really want to, I mean, when we're cutting, when you're cutting EQ, you want to try to keep it relatively narrow. You don't want to go anywhere below, you know, a full band octave or a Q of 1. But around 1.2, and let's follow the 3 dB rule. Normally, you know, a 3 dB reduction in gain or boost, if there's a significant difference, that's cool. That's what we want to aim for. So let's turn this off, we'll listen, and then I'll go ahead and we'll enable it, and we'll see if we could tell a difference. So again, this is bypassed. We'll engage it. Let's make it a little bit more audible here, just for reference. Let's go back to that same clip. So bypassed. And you could tell, I mean, it's making room for the snare by doing this. It's also going to clean up some of the room for, I mean, because every single drum source is going to be competing in this frequency range. So that's one thing to look at, and this is going to change as you know, start bringing in other sources. So check your low mid frequency range, monitor it, and come back to your overheads as you're working through your mix to make sure that this is tamed and under control, and you'll have a much tighter, less muddy overhead track. Next thing you might want to look at is, you know, around the 4K range. That's going to be the presence of your cymbals. Now you can do this with a shelf, or we can do it via just one of our single bands. but we want to make sure that we're checking in on the presence of our cymbals. Now, it may be that the presence of our cymbals was captured fine, but check out this range and see what it does. I'm going to make the Q about a single octave, a Q of 1, and we'll boost it just about 4 dB, and then we'll actually, let's keep it at 0, and then I'll give her a boost and we can see the difference. So that's on, off, on. Hear the stick definition, and the really, like I said before, the presence of the cymbals really lies in this range. Now, 4 dB, like I said, that's about as far as I would go with it. If, it's best to keep things subtle, and you may want to increase the Q, or lower the Q. When you're boosting, it's okay to lower the Q, because you want to kind of keep it natural, and by lengthening that Q, it's almost like it was intended to be that way. So that's the presence range you might want to keep an eye out on. The last thing you might want to implement is a shelf, and you typically want to start around the 6K range, and we'll boost about just 3 dB or so. We'll start 0, we'll boost as we monitor the cymbal here. Now see, of course I can way overdo it, and you can tell the frequencies that we're adjusting. What this is going to do is just add a little bit of sheen, polish off those cymbals, and bring out some more of that the character that we want in our overhead track. And that's really it. That's where I start. And typically I'm not doing this in solo, other than maybe the low pass, to make sure that I can really hone in on the frequencies that I don't need. But what we'll do is we will listen with our overheads, non-processed with the EQ, just bypass the EQ, and then we'll bring the EQ back in, and we could see if we could tell an audible difference. And I'll go ahead and increase the overheads to try to make it easier to tell the difference here. So without, and then we'll enable it. Again without. Bring it back in. And overall, you could tell, I mean, it's tightening up our drum kit. It's providing the presence that we need in our overhead tracks. And it's really allowing the kick drum and the snare to have their own place to sit. It's getting out of the way, but again, complementing the higher frequencies that we intend the overheads to capture. So that's really it with processing the overheads with EQ. The only other thing would be maybe adding some space via reverb, things like that, but we're going to do that later on in the mix. So I hope that was helpful, guys. Use this. Again, if you are going to solo, use it for the high pass, and you may want to just, tweak things here and there in the solo form. But do this when you're first getting into overhead processing, and make better drum mixes. That'll be it for today. We'll go ahead, and tomorrow's video, we'll probably look at the snare drum, and we'll just continue from there. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. I am more than willing to get back to you. Actually, prefer that you submit any questions that you have, because I'm constantly learning, as I hope that you are from these videos, and to bring the questions together and elaborate on this subject is just going to help everybody. So thanks for your time, guys. We will see you in tomorrow's video. Have a good one.